Coming up, will the Nets exceed early season expectations again this year? And will Sean Marks crank up the heat on the team's tank? I'll answer all those fan questions and more after this.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's show, it's Fan Take Friday. I took questions from all of you on early season predictions for this new look Nets roster, Brooklyn's new additions, the Giannis rumors, and more. So let's get right into these. First question. It's early, but with some talented vets leading the way, I feel like we are heading in a similar direction as last season. Tank starts late, and we get the 8th to 10th pick again. Might as well let them be a play-in team, if not tanking from day one. And this is going to be the story, the early season story for the Nets. There's going to be a lot of comparisons to last year when this team, held on to some veterans into the year and started 9-10 and really put themselves behind the 8 ball in that tank race, from which they were really not able to recover. And they end up with the 6th worst record, fall to the 8th pick. And this listener and a lot of other fans that I've talked to seem to think that this is heading in a similar direction. And I understand why you could think that. Like, you look at this Nets roster, and while we would agree that it is one of the worst rosters in the league, there still are capable players up and down this roster. Like, you look at guys like Michael Porter Jr., Terrence Mann, Haywood Highsmith, Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharpe. You hope Noah Clowney emerges. Like, there are veterans on this team who are capable. Cam Thomas, obviously, despite his uncertainty, has to be mentioned there. Like, there are players who can play on this team. But I would say that if you look at, and this is the reason why I haven't really wavered on the fact that I think this team is going to be worse out of the gate than it was last season. You look at that stretch last season, the beginning of the year, what was the biggest factor by far in that Nets team exceeding expectations? It was Dennis Schroeder, who was playing at an all-star level for the first, 23 games of the year before he got traded. I mean, you look at Schroeder during that stretch, he was averaging 18.5 points and 6.6 assists while shooting like 39% from three on 6.5 attempts per game. He was playing out of his mind, and he was the player who had the ball in his hand the most on this Nets roster, and he was just doing a great job. Obviously, you had guys like Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith, and obviously Cam Thomas playing well also, but Schroeder was the guy. And going from Schroeder to these rookie ball handlers, and Yegor Dioman, who's supposed to be the best of those, obviously, probably isn't going to be ready for the first game of the regular season, or might not be ready. I just think that drop-off is going to be massive. And then if you look at the other spots, like Cam Johnson was also playing out of his mind from day one of last year. And you look at going from Cam Johnson to Michael Porter Jr., I've said MPJ is, I think, in a similar tier to Cam Johnson, but I would say that from a shot creation standpoint and a secondary playmaking standpoint, secondary ball handling standpoint, the areas where the Nets are really lacking, Cam Johnson was able to pick up some of that slack last year in a big way, much better than I envisioned Michael Porter Jr. being able to do that, because MPJ just has a different skill set. He's not as good of a ball handler. He's not as good as a decision maker and passer. So, I just don't see him, filling that role. Could he maybe could he be a guy who is, hitting threes off the move and getting the ball in the mid post and scoring from that area and doing some of these things and creating that way? Sure. I just don't see it having the same level of impact as Cam Johnson did within this Jordi Fernandez system. And then also just the Schroeder to the rookie point guards is really the biggest thing. Like, going from Schroeder and the level of production that he had last year to going to what is probably, to start the year, going to be Ben Surratt and Nolan Troy, or Yegor Dioman and Ben Surratt if they get healthy. I think that that's just going to be a massive drop-off. And we've heard all of the buzz about Ben Surratt. I've reported on it extensively throughout training camp and throughout the offseason, and we saw Ben look good against Hapoel Jerusalem, but I would say he's playing Hapoel Jerusalem. So, we're going to get preseason games this weekend against the Suns, 2 of them, and then they'll close out the preseason against the Raptors. But I think that the drop off from Schroeder to Ben Saraf is going to be massive. And I think once we get into the regular season, Nets fans are going to see what having a rookie like Saraf or like Dioman or like Troy, or whoever has the ball for most of the game, that's not going to be a recipe for success. And the Nets knew that. That's why they didn't re-sign D'Angelo Russell in free agency. That's why they went into this year, didn't sign any other veteran point guard or floor general. And they've gone in with 3 rookie point guards. And that, to me, is a signal of the tank, the urgency, and all of those things. So I think that this team is going to be worse out of the gate than it was last year when they started 9-10. Next couple of questions in a similar vein. Am I crazy to think after one preseason game that I think we're going over on our 20.5 win line this season? Despite the weak team, the Nets seem solid, scrappy, and well-coached. Even though we have a hard schedule early on, it might end up being like the Raptors last year. And then another question, are you going with the over under 20.5 projected wins for the Nets? Okay, first question, am I crazy to think after one preseason game that the Nets are going over? If you're thinking that because of what you saw in that preseason game, that's a little crazy because the Nets are playing a team in Hapoel Jerusalem that, obviously is nowhere near NBA level competition. But no, I mean, I would say that you're not crazy to think that. I mean, you look at this Nets team, and I do think that they're going to be worse than last year, but they won 26 games last year. So I think that the Nets are going to go under just because I think that there's going to be so much more tanking urgency. And I wrote about this yesterday. You look at what the Nets did in that trade with the Houston Rockets. They gave up 4 first-round picks for 2 first-round picks to get back their 2025 and 2026 first-rounders. And this past season, they barely saw a return on that trade. The Phoenix Suns pick that they traded away was 10th. The Nets ended up 8th. So not really much of a return there. And a lot of that was because of the lack of, obviously bad luck in the lottery, but also the lack of tanking urgency that this team had out of the gate last year. So Sean Marks, I think, is really going to be feeling some heat and some pressure to justify that Rockets trade. Because if the Nets come in this year and they get another bad pick and they don't come away with a guy who looks like he could be, a future face of the franchise type guy, that Rockets trade is going to get crushed. So I think that we're going to see more urgency from Sean Marks. And I think that we've already seen that with him going with exclusively rookie guys, rookie point guards out of the gate. And, I think that that's a reason as the year goes on, if the Nets do start to play well, I think we'll see them do some things that they didn't do last year, whether it be some earlier trades, whether it be benching guys, whether it be taking whatever measures they need to in order to ensure that they end up where they want to be in the lottery standings, which is top 3. So that's why I say under. But are you crazy to think that this Nets team could go over? No. Like, the line is 20.5 wins. Could this Nets team win 21 games with, say Cam Thomas has a good year? I think they'll trade him probably earlier in the year, like Schroeder, if he starts to play really well. But say Cam Thomas starts out hot, some of these rookies play a little bit better than expected, and you have these veterans like Michael Porter Jr., Terrence Mann, Nick Claxton starts playing well. Day'Ron Sharpe continues his ascension. You have another year under Jordy Fernandez's system, and a lot of people are in year 2 of that system, and they get a little bit more comfortable and they punch above their weight and are scrappy like they were last year under Jordy Fernandez. Like, they could definitely win 21 games. Like, that wouldn't shock me at all. But just based on what the thought process should be and what Sean Marks has somewhat already shown the thought process to be with his offseason moves and drafting 5 rookies, I think that there's going to be more urgency, and that would lend me to believe, even if they start out like not as good, but similar to how they did last year, that there's going to be more urgency than there was last year to ensure that they stack losses and get where they want to be. So that's what I would say about that. Next couple questions before a break. Considering what we heard previously, any chance on a Giannis trade? If so, what would a package from Brooklyn look like? Yeah, I talked about this the other day with Lucas Kaplan. Go check that episode out if you didn't, if you haven't not already, on the heels of that Shams report with the Knicks. And any chance on Giannis? Like, I do think there's a chance. I'm definitely not closing that door. Is it the most advisable route, in my opinion, for the Nets, or is it likely? No. But I do think there's a chance, and I outlined on that podcast with Lucas, so go check that out. But, just briefly summarizing what I said, it looks like Giannis is going to be traded. He wants to go to the Knicks, and it doesn't seem like the Knicks have anywhere near the package that the Bucks are going to want. So if you look at, what that Knicks package is going to be, it's probably going to be Cat and then flipping, Cat and OG and seeing what maybe you could flip OG to a third team for, and you get Cat and some picks and swaps. Like, What does that do for the Bucks? Like, that's not a good package. And because of that reason, I think there's going to be other teams involved. And I would expect the Nets to be one of those teams. And the reason for that being the Nets are, rumored, or not rumored, they're reported and known to be extremely high on Giannis. That has been their guy that they've wanted, which isn't surprising because he's like the only top 10 guy who seems likely to change teams in the near future. So you have that. You also have the fact that they have the assets to put together a really competitive package. And you have the fact that they don't have their 2027 pick. And we know they're going to try to be getting better after this season. Now, a lot of that is going to depend on what happens with the Nets this year. Do they land a top pick in this draft and a guy like AJ DeBansta, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson? That could change the equation. And also, more so depends on Giannis. And is there any way that he could see this Brooklyn destination as viable and attractive? For a guy who said that his biggest thing is competing for a championship and wanting to win a second championship, I'm not sure he's going to see this Brooklyn destination as, viable. But the Nets do have some stuff working for them in the fact that he clearly wants to play in New York. It's been for the Knicks, they've said, but he finds the New York market attractive. Being in the East is much more attractive than being in the West right now if you're trying to make it to the finals. And the Nets have the assets to put together a package, a really competitive package. So what would that package look like? I mean, you're looking at probably 3 or 4 first-round picks, swaps. It would be headlined by that 2032 unprotected Nuggets pick. In terms of the picks, that would headline the pick package. Then you also have the Knicks picks. You have some swapped picks. You have the Philadelphia pick in 2027. So multiple picks headlined by that Denver one, multiple swaps, and then some salary fillers and probably a young prospect. Like, you have fillers like Michael Porter Jr. is a filler option. Nick Claxton, obviously a filler option. And then you have all these young prospects. You talk about Noah Clowney and Day'Ron Sharpe. You talk about the 5 rookies. Like, which of those guys show promise? You could throw one of those guys in there. So all of the picks that the Nets have, probably Michael Porter Jr. as a main salary filler, and then some young prospects. Like, that is what the package is probably looking like. Nick Claxton could get involved there, but that's what I would say. And I would say that it's a competitive package. It's just a matter of how bad do the Nets want to get involved, and how badly, or is there any chance that Giannis sees this as a viable destination? One more Giannis question before a quick break. Why do you think the Giannis-Donovan Mitchell pairing didn't happen? And I touched on that briefly, I touched on the fact that seemed to be the plan A, and that's what I've heard from around the league for the Nets, was pairing Giannis with Donovan Mitchell was their plan A before they made that Mikal Bridges trade. And why didn't it happen? Because, Mitchell was the guy that they were probably going to be going after first because he had his contract expiring. He was rumored to be wanting to come home to play in New York. And I just think that when you look at how that Nets team performed during that 2023-24 season, they really kind of imploded. Obviously, they fired Jacque Vaughn. Mikal Bridges took a huge step back, and the team just kind of looked in disarray. And then if you're Donovan Mitchell, no matter how bad you want to play in New York, if you're looking at this roster that you have around you in Cleveland that's ascending with guys like, Evan Mobley and like Darius Garland and like all the pieces that they were able to get around him and what their situation was there. You talk about leaving that for a Brooklyn team that was imploding. That would have been just a ridiculous decision on his part. And I don't think that it was one that he was going to make. And Donovan structured his contract. He signed that, a 2+1 contract where he's staying in Cleveland. He's giving himself a chance. He gave himself a chance last year to compete. He has another chance. They're the favorites in the East this coming season. And after that, he'll reevaluate. So we'll be, is it something that maybe the Nets could revisit down the line? We'll see. But that's why it didn't happen, because that 2023-24 team was just in disarray. But we got more questions about the Nets salary cap situation. How are they going to navigate that? Which rookies will show promise during the coming season? So I'll get to all that and more when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. Guys, I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in just under a minute. My favorite part, Prize Picks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. Guys, download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode on this Fan Take Friday, rolling on through all of your takes and questions. Next one. Hey, Eric, how does the NBA determine if a team is over the salary cap or hits the aprons? Is it based on the team's salary at a specific date, or is it calculated differently? I'd like to understand how much time the Nets have to reach the salary floor to avoid any penalties. So, yeah, the Nets are for about, if you account for their guaranteed contracts, I just did an episode on this also. Nets are about $4.2 million below the salary floor right now, and they're going to have to hit that by the start of the regular season. That is the date. In the old CBA, it was by the end of the regular season, and in the new CBA, it's the start of the regular season. And if they do not hit that salary floor by the start of the regular season, they don't get their share of any of the end of the season luxury tax payments. All the teams that are in the luxury tax pay their tax, and it gets distributed amongst the teams who are not in the tax. So if the Nets do not hit that salary floor by the start of the regular season, they miss out on that share, and it's not an option. Like, they're going to hit the salary floor. So that could be by a trade. That could be by, waiving a guaranteed player and guaranteeing some of their non-guaranteed guys, but they're going to do it one way or another. And the other questions, like the aprons and the salary cap, like the salary cap and the aprons are calculated by where your salary is at, and there are moves that teams can make in this new CBA that trigger hard caps at the aprons, whether the first or the second, when it's, taking back more money in a trade than you send out, acquiring a player via sign and trade. There's all these different things, using certain amount of, traded player exceptions, like all of those things can trigger hard caps, but it's calculated on your payroll. And then the luxury tax is a separate conversation. The luxury tax bill for all of those teams is calculated at the end of the regular season. And that's why I said the Nets are going to get up to the salary floor, but I do not expect them to go much above it. And if the Nets get just to the salary floor and just like a smidge above it, they're going to have around $15 million in cap space. And that is significant because there are going to be teams who are in the luxury tax right now who are trying to get out of it by the end of the regular season. And that they can do that at the trade deadline because the luxury tax bill is not calculated until the end of the regular season. So Boston Celtics, a team I would be looking at, Toronto Raptors, Orlando Magic, some of these other teams. Celtics probably the main one, but they're a team that is going to be looking to get off contracts, whether it's Anthony Simons, whether it's Sam Hauser, and the Nets being the only team in the NBA with cap space at the deadline. I definitely think that we're going to hear some smoke about those two teams getting involved when we get closer to February about a deal. Next question, how many of the 5 rookies can we expect to appear on the 2 all-rookie teams? All of them? No, not all of them. Any of them would probably be a surprise, but if we're talking about who are the most realistic candidates for the Nets, it would be Yegor Dioman is the guy we said before the regular season. I had talked about it, and that was just based on the projection of how expansive his role is going to be, how much he's going to have the ball in his hands, and could he get to, some nights where he's putting up 10 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, and he's able to maintain that stat line for an extended period. That could, give him a case to be on the all-rookie team just based on how expansive his role is. But Yegor is now dealing with this plantar fascia tear. We don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the regular season. I think he's going to be fine in the long term, but that's going to give Ben Saraf an opportunity early in the year, as we're seeing in the preseason. So could Saraf be a guy who impresses and exceeds expectations? I think so. I think all rookie team is probably that would be pretty generous, and that would probably be him exceeding expectations by a ton. But I don't think you can rule it out just based on the level of the role that he could have if Yegor is hurt. But if Yegor comes back and takes back the lion's share of those ball handling responsibilities, he'd probably be the more likely guy who would have a case. And then if you talk about Nolan Traore, Danny Wolf, Drake Powell, I would expect those guys to probably start the year in the G League, and I think they will get NBA minutes, but I don't think they'll have the role out of the gate to contend for all rookie team. Next question, Terrence Mann looked unstoppable against Hapoel Jerusalem. Should he be in the early MVP conversations? Maybe the preseason MVP conversations, because I will say that Terrence did look great against that team that, once again, was far from NBA level competition. But I think he had like 14 or 15 points, 6 or 7 shooting from the field, a few steals, a bunch of rebounds. Like, he did look good. And I said, Terrence is like an interesting player to me because he's a guy who played a very solidified role, started a ton of games for a Los Angeles Clippers team that was in the playoffs each year. Then obviously he gets shipped to Atlanta in that Bogdan Bogdanovic trade, and then he gets salary dumped to the Nets. But I could see him being a player who has a chip on his shoulder, got traded twice in the last year. He comes into this Brooklyn team. He's going to have a role from day one. He's back where he was born. There's some, good feelings surrounding that. I could see him being a guy who exceeds expectations, and some fans like for how hard he's playing, and some fans are annoyed by from, him maybe doing some things that we saw some of the veterans do last year, whether it be a Dorian Finney-Smith or whoever you want to talk about. Like, he's a guy who can shoot the ball somewhat, has, some athleticism and off the dribble juice maybe that he's looking to unlock, but plays really hard on defense and is a consummate professional. So I would expect to see Terrence Mann have a good year this year, and maybe that could lend itself to some trade conversations down the line. We'll see. Next question: is waiving Dariq Whitehead, then signing him to a two-way contract, an option for the Nets? I spoke about this also on a recent podcast because it seems like I've been skeptical about whether or not the Nets would actually cut Dariq Whitehead, a player that we just saw them draft in the first round 2 years ago. But it could be trending in a direction like that because all we're hearing about is how great Tyrese Martin has played this offseason. And Tyrese Martin was way ahead of Dariq in the opening rotation, the rotation during that first preseason game. So it seems like Tyrese Martin is ahead of Dariq Whitehead in the race for that final roster spot right now. And there aren't really any other guaranteed guys that are viable to be waived, in my opinion, to open up that spot for Tyrese. You could talk about Haywood Highsmith. You could talk about Kobe Buffkin, but I just can't see the Nets waiving those guys over Dariq Whitehead. So Dariq may be waived, and is re-signing him to a two-way an option. Like, it's an option. He's eligible. Is it a realistic option? I'm not sure. Like, I don't, when you waive a first round, like you've waived a former first round pick like that 2 years, after drafting him, it's a signal that you're really not high on him at all, and you're very low on him, and you're probably giving up on him in that case. So if you're Dariq in that case, why would you want to sign a two-way contract with that team that just admitted that they're not that high on you, and you're probably not going to be a significant part of their future plans? In that case, you'd probably want to evaluate your options and go to another team where they might be higher on you and they think that they can revitalize you and they're willing to put more stock in you moving forward. So I don't really think the two-way is an option for Dariq. The other non-guaranteed guys who could be waived, like Jalen Wilson, probably not an option for him either. Drew Timme might be the guy where if he gets waived, he could sign a two-way, just because he was a guy who came in late last year from the G League, signed a 10-day. Sure, he got this deal, but it was always non-guaranteed. So I could see him sticking on a two-way. But even Timme, I think he might have some other options where he would want to go somewhere that might value him more if he is waived. So we'll see, but it's going to be interesting to follow how this goes with Dariq moving forward. Next question before a break: do you think the Nets should trade specifically for more 2026 firsts? Why or why not? I could see it. I mean, the Nets only have their own first-round pick next year, as opposed to all these other drafts where they have multiple picks. So it would make some sense from that perspective for the Nets to try to get another pick in this draft. But I'd also say the Nets drafted 5 rookies in this past class. It's going to be a really difficult task to develop all those guys at the same time. Then you're going to have this other new player coming in. You also have young guys like Noah Clowney, like Dariq Whitehead if he's 6th round. So there's a lot of youth on this team. But if the Nets see an opportunity to get into this 2026 draft, with a good value deal where they're moving off a future pick and they get a pick that they feel, is better value in this draft, that could make sense. But I have talked to some draft people and they've said that the top 3 or 4 of this draft is really, really strong, stronger than last year's, which was also really strong. And then there seems to be a drop off after the 3rd or 4th pick in this draft. So I don't know how much, how likely it would be that the Nets want to trade for another 2026 first if that's the case, but it's just so early. We're going to have to see how it plays out. But we got a few more questions about some potential trades, about the Nets rookie class, and about Barclays Center that some of you guys submitted. So I'll get to all those when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. But before that, want to tell you about our friends over at Quo. Guys, one of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. I love how Quo, formerly Open Phone, lets your team share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, so no customer gets left hanging. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hour calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. Guys, see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Guys, FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode on this Fan Take Friday, rolling on through the final questions that I got from you guys. Now that he's signed, how would Jonathan Kuminga look in a Nets uniform if we trade for him before the deadline, and who would Golden State want from us? I don't really see Jonathan Kuminga as a trade target for this Nets team. First, I don't really think that he's the type of player that Jordi Fernandez would really want to target, like in this system. Like Jordi Fernandez obviously wants to shoot a lot of threes. There's a lot of movement involved. Like it's not the Warrior system. It's different, but Steve Kerr has these problems with Jonathan Kuminga, and that's why he doesn't see him being a fit. And granted, he's playing alongside Steph Curry and these other guys. So could the Nets see him as a guy that could potentially pop and have this expansive role like on the ball and do these things that he clearly wants to do that he's not able to do in Golden State? Maybe, but I don't really see the Nets being too bullish on that. And I think that they probably view him, like a lot of other teams in the league, as more of a tertiary guy. And he hasn't really shown skills in that regard that fit well with what Jordi Fernandez is looking for and what Sean Marks seems to be looking for. I mean, Sean Marks just made this draft class, and he told us after the draft, like 0.5 second basketball, the ball doesn't stick, like high feel pass first guys. That was obviously a theme of the Nets draft. Does Jonathan Kuminga really fit that mold with what he wants his role to be? Probably not. If he did, he'd probably be a better fit for Steve Kerr and what they want there in Golden State. So I don't really see it, for the Nets purposes, and also, for the Warriors purposes. They signed Jonathan Kuminga to that contract where he's making like $24 million this season. And if they're going to trade him, they're probably going to be trading him in another deal to try to make an upgrade and really make a run at this with like a fringe star level guy, another fringe star level guy to put alongside Steph Curry. And the Nets don't really have that to offer, in my opinion. So, I mean, unless you're talking about like Michael Porter Jr., I guess, but I don't see it for the Nets. And I just think that it wouldn't really make much sense for the Nets or the Warriors unless the Nets are just willing to overpay, which I don't see them doing. Next question. How common is it for a rookie drafted number 26 or later to start on opening night? It appears that Ben Surratt may do that this season, and I do not know how to research how rare it is. It's rare. I mean, you don't really see rookies drafted at that spot usually start. If you do, they're on teams like the Nets. They're not on contenders, but contenders usually have those picks late in the draft. So it is rare. I don't have like numbers right now to give you for how rare it is, but it's rare, and it's especially rare for a point guard, a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands. Like, we just see that those guys take a lot of time to develop, and Ben Surratt being the 26th pick, him starting at point guard would be an interesting story, and that would obviously have to do with Yegor Dioman being injured. But any of these Nets rookie guys I think are going to struggle this year, but Ben Surratt starting at point guard as a number 26 pick, starting to open the year, that's rare, and it's definitely a story, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But Ben has been regarded as one of the most NBA ready of these Nets rookies by Sean Marks. We've heard how well he's played, and that's not surprising because he played for a Ratio Far team last season that made it to the finals in the Bundesliga and was a good team by all accounts. And Saraf carried a really heavy load. So he is seasoned. And, it's going to be fun to see how he plays. Last question. What are your top 5 go-to food items at Barclays Center? Interesting question to close it out. When I used to go to games as a non-reporter, would eat the concession food a lot more. Now we get food, given to us in the media workroom in that area, but sometimes still we'll go up, get some Barclays Center stuff. I really like these tacos. Like there's a taco stand that they have that I think has really good, they have these like birria tacos and then chicken tacos, and they're really good. So I would go check that out. The Paisanos or whatever it is has really good burgers. There's Buffalo Boss has those like buffalo chicken tenders, which are good, but there's a lot of good food options at Barclays Center. I think during the first preseason game, I saw some new ones in the concourse. I don't know if it was like something Mediterranean or something like that, but I would say the tacos I really like. The Paisanos burgers, always good. The Juniors desserts, always really good. Also a good option if you're there. And then I would say Buffalo Boss, probably good. And there's like kosher options also that are good food, like if you're a kosher person. So a lot of good food options at Barclays Center. And if you're going there, check those out. Check out the tacos. I think the tacos are really slept on. They're a really good item there that I tend to gravitate towards when I'm getting food not in the media workroom. But that's all we have for this Fan Take Friday. Once again, appreciate all of you guys who submit questions, continue to participate. If I did not get to your questions, I apologize. I got a time limit on this podcast. Got to as many as I could. But if you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you have a second right now, if you enjoy the content, smash that like button. Just hover over it, click it. It takes 1 second. It really helps the show. Leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Let me know what you thought about any of these takes. But we got Nets preseason action going on right now, probably as this is airing on the podcast feed. It'll air on the video on Thursday. But Friday morning, 8 a.m., got the Nets in Phoenix. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.